It is the inaction of those who could act. It is the indifference of those who knew better. And it is the silence of justice that allows evil to triumph.
Keep watching to learn more. Book 4 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Emmy Vadnais, co-host with Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is why dictators fear open minds with my guest, Eddie Bilimoria, who is a consultant engineer and has been project manager and head of design for major projects such as the Channel Tunnel. He is a trustee of the Scientific and Medical Network, advisor to the Galileo Commission of the network, a trustee and council member of the Francis Bacon Society, and was the education manager for the Theosophical Society in Australia. He is author of the books Mirages in Western Science Resolved by Occult Science, The Snake and the Rope, and his 4-volume work Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and Intelligent Powers in Nature and Humans. He is also author of the article, Truth in the Shadows, Why Dictators Fear Open Minds. This is Eddie's 5th interview with New Thinking Aloud. If you enjoy this program, please like, subscribe, press the bell icon, and share. He is joining us from Godalming, which is south of London. Now I'll switch over to the internet video. Welcome, Eddie. It is a true joy to have you back with me on New Thinking Aloud today.
Emmy, it's my pleasure and truly my honor and privilege, because what you are doing is really disseminating high vibration thought, if I may put it that way, trying to get across into the world that there is a new way of looking at life, a new way of looking at the world in a manner that brings people together. It doesn't sort of negate the past, of course, but we can't hang on to the past. We have to understand the problems that we have created, and by virtue of new thinking, to surmount and transcend those problems. So thank you very much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Thank you for that beautiful compliment. Today we're going to be discussing your new article, Truth in the Shadows, Why Dictators Fear Open Minds. And on New Thinking Aloud, we value, embrace, and encourage people having open minds and open hearts. Your article really caught my attention because it shows the antithesis of what can happen when people are not encouraged to embrace having an open mind.
Thank you, Emmy. Indeed. An open mind, of course, doesn't mean saying the first thing that comes to you under the guise of free speech and creating division and dissension. It means really embracing a plurality of viewpoints and not being afraid of criticism. Now, in my volumes, Unfolding Consciousness, periodically I make the point that the more someone resorts to foul language and expletives, the weaker the argument. Because if you have no strong argument, that's why you resort to potty mouth words. So free speech and open minds must always be underpinned by dignified behavior and dignified language.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it degenerates. It's not open mind. It degenerates, into the sort of division and swearing and conflict that results.
Let's talk a little bit about what a dictator is and how they develop. How do they get into power?
We unfortunately start asking the question when it's too late. Now, let me say, if I mention names, and one has to mention names, I'm not talking about their personalities. I'm not talking about the shape of their nose. I'm just using the name to illustrate a point, and that's all. I'm using a name impersonally. So we ask the question, how does a dictator come about when it's too late? I've often said to people, Hitler could not run concentration camps on his own. He could not command armies on his own. One thing we have to be aware of is that a dictator or any powerful speaker with an ideology, first he invades the mind of people. He invades the minds of his nation, and then all the other invasions follow suit. So the first invasion is the mind. And dictators will work by getting you to hate. I mean, it was typically Hitler's evil genius by getting the German people to hate. So when you get someone to hate, you've immediately got another enemy that you're then going to fight. And the most beautiful story, real story I can give you about that, about someone who understood that amongst many others, was the great concert pianist Alice Sommers, who was in the ghetto camp in Czechoslovakia. And to cut a long story short, because she was such an accomplished pianist, she gave concerts. I mean, just think of giving concerts in those conditions. And she played the most difficult work, the Chopin Etudes. And there were no gas chambers there, so the way you thin the population of the ghetto was go and stand outside in the rain all night. And that way, quite a few people dropped dead, of course, but Alice Sommers survived, being out in freezing rain. So anyway, one day, the tall SS officer approached her, and she obviously froze and thought, I'm going to be killed. She said, my mother, he said, was the head of a music conservatoire, and I know the pieces you play well, and we have decided that you will not be on the deportation list. But her husband Leopold was not spared, but when they parted, Leopold told his wife Alice, I want you to teach our little boy never to hate. He realized that it was the evil genius who taught people to hate that caused this ghastly scenario known as the Holocaust. So whether it's Jews, Muslims, you name it, that's irrelevant. Christians, Hindus, whatever. It's teaching people to hate the other person. That's the way a dictator works. What was the process that got him there? So we need to look at the process. And if we can snap the trajectory before it gets to its worst possibilities, then we have a greater understanding of how dictators come about. When they are on the ascendancy, it is the inaction of those who could act. It is the indifference of those who knew better. And it is the silence of justice that allows evil to triumph. Now, the silence of justice, it's the silencing of truth. Now, if I may, with your permission, this is, you might say, theory. Well, there are plenty of examples. Let's take a contemporary example where in the United States, where journalism on climate change is being slowly dampened down, because climate change is not compatible with the current administration's goals. So let's dampen down what the journalists will say on climate change. Let's take this big, beautiful bill that everyone's heard about. One of the senators actually said that it was morally and fiscally bankrupt, yet he voted for it. Examples like that. Why? Because they're too scared. Because they got this ridiculous truth social message in capitals. MAGA is not pleased. So if you lack courage, you will allow evil and falsity to triumph. Now, why did that senator, only hours before, say that it was morally and fiscally bankrupt and yet voted? Because obviously he thought he's going to lose something. Yes, what's he going to lose? One has to have the courage to say, I'm prepared to lose, which is easier said. In Russia, you'd be very likely thrown out of the top floor of your flat. Thank goodness in America that doesn't happen so far.
Yeah.
But you're going to lose your position, certainly, and you're going to lose your job. But I'm arguing that if enough people spoke up, it would galvanize other people and fire them with some moral courage. We see examples of the suppression of truth. When the military is deployed to quell a generally peaceful protests, when elected officials of the opposing party are handcuffed, when student activists are deported and jailed, when there's when a wide range of civil institutions, the law most of all, and the universities, and when the news outlets and scientists are targeted and penalized, it is hard to avoid the conclusion that our, meaning American, core freedoms are seriously under threat. It was the Texas Republican Keith Self. He was the one who called it. And it also Arizona's Andy Biggs said he didn't know anyone who would be happy with the bill, but he voted for it. Now, think of the karmic consequences for the individual. How does that person feel within himself, let alone his after-death state? So dictators are essentially cowards, and they are weak. They are weak. Now, why do I say weak? They have no power over themselves. The hardest person to control is yourself. It's much easier to control armies, but to control your own savage thoughts, that is the ultimate victory. So dictators are weak. Now, what I'm saying, Emmy, is if we could get into the public perception this idea, it's not an ideology, this idea to work on, that a dictator is a weak person, we wouldn't go in front of them. We wouldn't kiss their feet. I would say that a householder, say a man, obviously, or a woman who goes to work, a difficult job, a troublesome marriage, a sick child, ailing parents, who keeps his family together and behaves decently and morally with dignity and real compassion, that man has got more power and strength than the dictators we worship. If we could get into the public perception the idea that power is an inner quality, it's not the man who commands armies outside, it's not the man who can order his henchmen to throw you from the 5th floor or 10th floor of a skyscraper. Power is an inner quality that if you got no power over your own thoughts, you are a weak person. And if that message could get out into the public perception, it would change the way we drool at the feet of these dictators. And also, there is a big difference between power and strength.
Many people have a hard time taking responsibility for themselves and want somebody else to take care of them. In fact, that's often how cults can gain strength as well.
Yes, indeed. Your typical dictator will harp on your fears. They will rarely resonate with your aspirations. They will invariably point to your fears and, what you're fearful of.
There are some listening who may think, well, a dictatorship is really what we need because people can't make good choices in a democracy, for example.
Yes, that is a valid point, Emmy, that is. But it would have to be a very benevolent dictator.
Right.
Now, let's just think of the parent-child relationship. When your little son or daughter is 1 year old and you're teaching it manners, are you a dictator?
No.
No, you're an educator. You're an educator. And part of obedience is to be disobedient, of course. So you're not being a dictator. So just moving that analogy on, we can set the dictatorship more in the guise of education.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Certainly when child becomes a teenager, the relationship is rather different.
Yeah.
And there has to be a point where you say, well, I've given you everything. Now you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're dealing with a totally unruly situation, then there has to be that rather enforced, you can call it dictatorship. But I think sooner rather than later, you've got to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something, Emmy. I heard a wonderful interview yesterday, a music interview, with Dame Rachel D'Souza, who was the Children's Commissioner for England. And she gave us live examples, and there's nothing like a real example of when she was head teacher in various schools, very deprived schools. She introduced music, and as she put it, the whole atmosphere changed from guns and weapons to, my gosh, I never heard this, and there was cooperation and harmony. So that's the way to do it. Not by arming every child with a gun.
Yeah. In your article, speaking of education, you talked about how books have been banned.
Typical. That's the playbook. That's the absolute playbook of the dictator.
Mm-hmm.
In Nazi Germany, there were 27 faculties of Sanskrit before the Third Reich. Afterwards, there were no students there. Books on philosophy and metaphysics were burned. And it's pretty obvious to see why, because truth and inquiry, philosophy is encouraging inquiry. Truth will always welcome criticism. Falsity will fear criticism. And so you ban what you don't want people to read and hear about.
Mm-hmm.
It proves the irony of the human situation, the suggestibility of human beings, where let's just recall that the German people were among the most educated in the world then, yet they fell for this propaganda. So the power of propaganda is immense.
Yeah.
So banning books in Nazi Germany, also removing 400 books from the Naval College in the United States, but keeping Hitler's Mein Kampf, is the same situation. I believe that has been rescinded, but whether it has or hasn't, the order was given to remove 400 books from the Naval College, including one of the songs by, I forget her name, but 2 books of Hitler's Mein Kampf are there. What's that telling you? And then, of course, the attack on the universities.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun. The only new thing under the sun is we haven't learned.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of learning going on right now, unfortunately. Yeah. I just also want to add that one of the books that was removed was from the award-winning actress Julianne Moore, called Freckle Face Strawberry, because I believe her daughter was perhaps self-conscious about her appearance, and she wanted her daughter to be comfortable with how with her beautiful self, with her freckles and who she is. And I did look it up before this interview, and it looks like it hasn't been officially banned. However, it's now going on to be reviewed. So it's still in review, which is really actually quite horrific if you think about it, because that is a sweet book about people being comfortable with themselves, with their own unique selves.
And I ask you, Emmy, that if the highest levels of government in the United States and the Defense Department have got the time to think about this sort of thing, what is the mentality of the person? And are they in their heart of hearts in favor, or are they just following a chain of command like cowards?
Critical thinking can lead to critique.
Yes, jolly well ought to.
Right, which is why I'm so grateful to talk with you today, is because we're having a more critical analysis of what is a dictator and why, like you say, if they were benevolent, they could be helpful, but frequently they are not and actually destroy communities and wreak havoc on societies.
In the name of offering them a golden age of economic prosperity.
Yeah.
The bait on the end of the fishing line is always, you'd be better off economically. Never spiritually, nothing else, just what's in your wallet.
And not to mention the environment, which is necessary for us all to continue inhabiting this beautiful planet.
Yes, hence we the dictator shuts down all journalism to do with the environment, because it doesn't suit, as I said earlier, it doesn't suit the administration.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't suit drill baby drill.
Yes, exactly.
Emmy, there's another very significant point, if I can mention it.
Please.
And it's this whole question of what is a victory. Of course, the Nazis were, thank goodness, and the Japanese were defeated militarily. It was a military victory. It was not a mental victory.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to deal with the physical. Like if you have a physical disease, you deal with the physical. But then you deal with, if it was psychosomatic, of course, not an injury, you deal with the mental problem that caused it. And I would say, with unequivocally, the same dark forces that inspired the Nazi movement, then the communists are still very active and working their way. Empires, or for that matter, Rivieras now in Gaza, empires that are built on the pyramid of skulls with bloodshed, those empires will rise and fall. But think of the Greek Empire, or the mighty Greek and the mighty Roman Empire. Physically, they're no more, but that force is still there, because the hatred, the unfulfilled passion, the karma of that situation will seek new bodies in new ages to carry on that unfulfilled business. So the walls of ancient Rome and the walls of Greece may be full of cockroaches and whatever, but the influence, the people will be born and are being born in new bodies because the conflict was not resolved. And I would say that is the same with World War II. And we see this rise in Germany now and in other places. Until people realize what science has told us so clearly, that we are interconnected at the deepest level. So karma is a very, very important consideration.
Yes. And reincarnation, it sounds like you're suggesting that we're still working it out.
Most certainly reincarnation. Reincarnation in societies, in groups, at a time when the circumstances are right for those groups to come together. We see many instances where groups of individuals have come together at a certain period in time. During the wonderful Enlightenment period, we had Francis Bacon and Isaac Newton and John Locke and Leibniz, all these tremendous minds in a relatively short space of time. We had Handel, Bach, Mozart, Chopin, Liszt. Within a few centuries, these wonderful people came into being when the moment was right, and also some people will come into being to sort out their problems when the moment is right. You see this in nations, you see this in societies, you see this in families.
What is the goal of a dictator?
The goal of a dictator is to fatten himself continuously. Feed a worm and he grows fatter. The worm doesn't say, "Thank you very much, I've had my fill." It's in the nature of a dictator always to want more and more and more. More admiration, more power, more material. You know, I've got the United States, so let's grab a bit of Greenland. Let's grab a bit of Canada. World War II. You know, got Germany. No, let's grab a bit of France. Let's grab a bit of Poland. It's always wanting more. It's greed personified and externalized.
Are dictators a symptom of the society that they represent?
The people have brought them into being, Emmy. Each dictator was once a little boy or girl. I mean, I don't have any girl dictators. He was once a little boy. He was brought into being by his environment and by his society. So in that sense, we are responsible. And I would say, I mean, how can I authenticate it? Of course not. But if dictators knew love, they would be in a different place. I would suggest that impersonally, if Donald Trump knew love from his parents, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing now. Now, that doesn't mean that every unloved child becomes a dictator. It entirely depends on your personal karma. If a child is unloved, that child could grow up to be a fountain of compassion for other unloved children. But on the other hand, if a child is unloved, that can have a very deleterious effect. But I find it impossible to believe that if a dictator has known real love, he could possibly be a brutal creature. I don't see that. And love has to be from parents, of course, and preferably both.
Perhaps it's part of our collective karma.
It is part of the collective karma.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And a materialistic society is fertile breeding ground for a dictator who will promise to give you everything you want on the material level.
Mm-hmm.
So it is part of the national karma, most certainly.
You mentioned Paul Brunton in your article, and I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about who he is and what he has to share about this topic.
Well, my goodness, Paul Brunton, in my view, and I never say anyone's the greatest, that's nonsense. He's one of the very, very greatest sages. Now, the relevance of Paul Brunton, he's a contemporary sage, so he spoke in the language we know now.
Mm-hmm.
He was initially a journalist, of course, and it is very well known that he traveled the length and breadth of India, seeking out all the wise men and the sages. And Ramana Maharshi he was then a disciple of Ramana Maharshi. And what he did was show how the ancient truths, since time immemorial, could be used in a practical sense, and how we could, at all levels, at the body, at the physical level, the mental, the spiritual, and the societal level, draw on these ancient truths to improve not only ourselves, but to improve the condition we live in. Now, the relevance, of course, of Brunton, he lived through World War II, and he knew all about the Cuban crisis. His great contribution was the power of meditation and what meditation can do. And he knew the inner influences behind the outer circumstances. He knew all the great scientists of his age because he was so well traveled and respected. But not just Brunton, as I say, never just stick to one. Ramana Maharshi was his great mentor. But what he did was transform or reword the Indian wisdom, which is really for the Indian psyche, through a Western idiom. So, besides Brunton, there is Manly Hall and there are many others. But the beauty of the Brunton books is they are notebooks on specific topics, like the body, meditation, the cause of war, the negatives, dark influences, and they're all written, the notebooks are in short note form. So you can take each note as a nugget and meditate on it.
How is he significant to dictators fearing open minds?
Highly, because having lived through World War II and his son was in Fleet Air Arm, he saw, experienced, observed the hidden influences behind this ghastly phenomenon. And of course, not only World War II, he was able to look back into all of history and see the same pattern. One of the points he made, which is worth dwelling on, is at that particular moment in time, there was that cruel attack upon humanity. And I always distinguish between Nazi and German. For me, German means Beethoven, it means Leibniz, it means Einstein. I mean, let's please keep the two separate. Nazi is a horrible cancer on the beautiful German body. So he saw the hidden influences behind what was happening then and why it was happening then, why there was this cruel attack on humanity. Now, why would it happen in Germany and in Japan, separated by vast distances? But what was going on in the atmosphere such that that evil rain cloud descended on German/Nazi people and the Japanese and the Italians?
Mm-hmm.
Then he makes the point that these adverse influences, having been just about defeated militarily in their direct attack, will now, and this is very significant, choose other means. In other words, there will not be just a direct attack, but there will be a scattered approach. So it will cause more infiltration, more confusion. And look, we see signs of this through now AI and the internet, social media. We see how minds are being scattered by distraction and adversarial thoughts, which is all to do with taking you away from your true self in an age of materialism.
There was just an article out in Time magazine about a research study that showed that AI is eroding critical thinking.
Of course. My goodness, it's not eroding, it's completely eradicating. It really, from my point of view, I wouldn't touch it. Well, you can always say everything, every cloud has a silver lining, but from my standpoint, if I write something good or bad, I stand by it. I'm responsible for it. But to rely on AI to do it, I don't own it. You know, I don't take responsibility. So it's not only eroding critical thinking, it's eroding many other human qualities.
Right. I think you bring up a really good point about people connecting with themselves, their own inner wisdom, and what role does intuition play in what we can do. And well, I'm in the United States. It definitely seems like this leadership is moving very much in the authoritarianism direction. However, I'm hoping with conversations like this and other ways it will not continue in that direction. But can we move a little bit into what can people do when they are part of a society or a country where this is occurring? And bringing up intuition, I think is a very significant way for people to connect with themselves. But what else can you share about that, or ways that we can move forward in a positive direction when we're suffering from some of this?
It is very easy to feel hopeless and desperate and to say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it, but you can. I mentioned the power of music. And there's also this, not exactly attack, but this clamping down on culture, I believe, in the United States. So music, open inquiry, forming discussion groups, not with the idea of trying to proselytize or push a particular point of view, but just to form a body of compassion, because the more people who think and feel together, there is almost a palpable energy entity. And if people of goodwill will get together and, well, if not meditate, at least dwell on things that are of significance, that is certainly the way forward. Encourage it in schools. Encourage it at a young age. Get children to understand that you are not safer with a gun in your hand. You are much safer with a beautiful poetry book in your hand.
Yes. And I know there are those listening who say probably to themselves that they probably have a gun on themselves in their vehicle, in their home, because they feel that that is the way to be the safest.
I'd feel unsafe with a gun.
Yeah. In the title of your article, the word fear is in there. And I think that that is something that I really feel has escalated, is that fear seems to continue to increase. And of course, there's in some cases, real reason to be fearful.
It causes a tightening of the aura. It causes an inner turning inwards. You're shutting down the doors. You're closing the windows, and you're living within your own bubble of,
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you've got to be sensible, but you can't counteract fear with more weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
And by putting more cameras on your doorstep and surveillance equipment. No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, vulnerability is one way to conquer fear. And that's a hard one to take, of course.
How has intuition helped you in your life in regards to fear, Eddie? If more people knew that they had an inner knowing, an inner compass, versus looking to an outward leader to fix things for them, which of course they're supposed to be representing us, at least in a democracy, that if people were able to connect more with that they would probably live a more joyful, less fearful, creative life.
If I were fearful, say, of losing my job, then one could firstly reason, what's the fear based on? Is it completely irrational? Is it what something said about me or didn't? Or is it a calling from within, that the fear is not a fear, but it's saying, move on, you've done your bit. I think fear can present a fearful face, if I can put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than fear, let's use the word vulnerability. I think it's important to be vulnerable, not fearful. And certainly in that sense, in my case, since you asked, the little understanding I have of what lies beyond the physical would certainly lead me to believe that if I've played my part, what am I worrying about?
Mm-hmm.
It's the old saying, God helps those who help themselves. So intuition comes into being when you've exhausted all the intellectual possibilities.
And you mentioned love, that if people can be more kind to themselves, more kind to others, that we could find a real connection with each other versus fearing each other, perhaps.
Most certainly. Listen to most political debates, how childish they are. I mean, forget the word love, I haven't heard of it, at least not in public. But when did you ever hear a politician say, I don't know, but I'll try and find out? Or I don't know the answer. Or maybe you've got a good point to make. That's not love, but it's acknowledging that there is another person of equal importance as yourself who has another angle to put on the dialogue, instead of constantly trying to win and score points.
Yeah, well, and it's basic respect to acknowledge when someone, as you say, has a good point.
And that is one of the expressions of love.
Yes.
Acknowledging the other person.
Eddie, I know we're going to have another topic on the occult sciences and how they can assist with negative, dark forces. Can you share a little bit today about how they can assist with this topic, or how it can maybe lead to some hope for people?
By pointing out that the roots of evil lie in the ego. So by pointing out that fact and describing or explaining the dynamics of that process, and also that incredibly important topic of elementals, which is a huge subject, which is so misunderstood and could cause such misunderstanding, that we people the world with our thoughts, and those thoughts are energy entities. They are real energy entities. Mm-hmm. So good thoughts, good words, we hear that all the time, but when one really realizes that an evil thought is really a virus that we are injecting into the world, we would guard our thoughts more responsibly. But then there's also the understanding of what's known as the astral light, or the anima mundi, which is the belt, if you like, next to the physical, the lowest levels of akasha, from which rain down like a thundercloud all what we have experienced as viruses and pesticides and war. But add to that, it hasn't just rained down, it's what we have sent up in the first place that created this thundercloud. So what we experience as disease and viruses is really the download, if you like, from the astral light of what we have sent up by our own thoughts and our own negative behavior. And of course, there's the positive side to that as well. So that dynamic is something rather considerable that the esoteric sciences, or if one wants to use the bold word, the occult sciences, because that's what it is, can explain. And, it really pains me when people, when use the word occult, they think witchcraft, Aleister Crowley. And, this is everything has its dark side. You wouldn't criticize medical science because of the dreadful thalidomide disasters. That something went wrong. So occult science is a sacred science, and it's really talks about nature's finer forces. But nature's finer forces have to be understood and managed with great responsibility. Otherwise, they will turn into the dark aspect that most people associate the occult sciences with.
Our thoughts create our realities, and we're all interconnected.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Most certainly, and that's not just a cliche, of course, yeah.
Some have suggested that there are astrological configurations that are contributing,
yes,
have and are contributing to dictators and other occurrences under the sun.
I wouldn't say contributing, but they are part and parcel of the cosmic clock. Mm-hmm. You would never say an astrological configuration is the cause, but they are correlations. But these events on planet Earth certainly occur during key astrological and astronomical configurations. Mm-hmm. They are planetary influences which, depending on the psyche in question, can create havoc, or if one is ready and prepared, can do wonderful things. So in that sense, the astrological influences are part and parcel of this phenomena. And certainly now, during this period of heightened sunspot activity, I think, one can say with the astrological configuration that it does provide an indication of when you should batten down the hatches and just take it easy, individually and nationally as well. Mm-hmm. Astrology is another one of these sublime and sacred subjects that is so taken out of context and rubbished.
Eddie, is there anything else you want to share today about why dictators fear open minds?
Let's mention an American, Mark Twain. See, these great people said it all, Emmy, in their different ways, but what they said was like an algebraic formula, which can be applied to any situation. And he said that whenever people are given a fetish, so to speak, or furnished with a fetish, and have been taught to believe it, then no end of evidence will ever change the minds of such people to withdraw their loyalty from it. And the fetish, I mean, is some of the garbage that politicians spew out. What sort of mindset would believe that someone telling you that fancy your children going to school and coming back with a gender change, and when people were interviewed, they say, well, yes, he said it, so yeah, I agree. Really? A gender change? I mean, that means weeks in hospital. It means surgery. You don't go to school and come back with being a boy and a girl. I mean, so you've been furnished with a fetish. No evidence will withdraw your loyalty. I don't know, even inwardly, if people know, that they've been furnished with a fetish. I think they really believe it. And the other side of that is when we've been given a tar baby, a sticky doll. A tar baby is any situation which is sticky and rough, and if you get your fingers into it, it's more sticky and more rough. And if you've been given a tar baby stuffed with jewels, diamonds and pearls, then, and you've been told it's very dishonorable to disembowel it, then you will never withdraw your loyalty from that. And you will be even glad not to examine what you've been told, that this tar baby is not stuffed with diamonds, but it's stuffed with costume jewelry, because you feel the dictator will make you feel that it's dishonorable to withdraw your loyalty from the fetish he's given you. So Mark Twain wrote that, not paraphrasing it very well. So in other words, when you've been told something by a televangelist or a politician and told to believe in it, you feel very glad not to examine what he's saying, because it's much easier to be lazy. Believe him, because you know that if you examine what he says, that tar baby won't be full of diamonds, it'll be full of rubbish. So critical thinking is what you mentioned.
It's hard for us as people to admit maybe that we've made a mistake.
Yes. If we learn from it, it's been worthwhile.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do, of course, but getting to people's perceptions that money and jet setting around, that is not real power. Real power is commanding the armies in your mind.
Yes, and it sounds like the dictators don't want people to command the armies in their minds.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
And really, talk more about love, not just using the word, but through the arts, through great music, through religion properly understood, through everything that brings a human being out of his little ego.
To become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best version of yourself is a diamond soul.
Yeah. Eddie, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Emmy.
I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you once again.
Thank you so much, Emmy. And I couldn't help noticing that your beautiful brooch, it's got those beautiful red, yellow, green colors, which matches the flowers behind you, the color.
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, this is the New Thinking Aloud Rainbow Yin Yang.
Yeah. And your flowers
Yes.
are the same color. Thank you, Emmy, ever so much. And we'll meet again.
Wonderful. I look forward to having many more conversations with you as well, Eddie.
Likewise. Been a great pleasure and a privilege. Thank you, Emmy.
Mine as well. And for those of you watching or listening, thank you for being with us, because you are the reason that we are here.
Yes. Well said. You are the reason. You are all part of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Book 4 in the New Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
You can now download all 8 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.